Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back from lunch. We would like to welcome you all today here for the Quantum Engineering Sub-Summit. So quantum is such an evolving topic that we felt the need for such a summit and discussions here today. And we are thrilled to gather the brightest mind in quantum innovation to explore the cutting-edge advances that are shaping our future. So without taking much time, I would like to start with the first session of this today's sub-summit, which is quantum economy, cybersecurity implementation, and migration strategies. So I would like to invite our speakers on stage, Mr. Nilesh Dhande, founder 42 Labs, Dr. Vishal, architect, BGSW, and Mr. Teja Chintalapati, senior manager, DSCI, who will be moderating this session.
Think thanks Bhavya for inviting us for today's discussion and welcome each one of you. And we are thrilled to have you here. And joining me in the first discussion today are Dr. Vishal, who is doing such a phenomenal work in the post-quantum domain at Bosch, not just from an architecture perspective, but also implementation of the algorithms that are coming up, that are being standardized onto the smallest of the microcontrollers that you can think of, not just the controllers that are, let's say, advanced, but also controllers that have been already deployed in the field. And we have with us Mr. Nilesh. Nilesh is the founder of 42 Labs, who again is doing incredible work in the post-quantum space. And I can't wait to hear from both of them in terms of essentially what and how the quantum is shaping up in the next decade, and what we need to be ready with as a country and as well as an enterprises, right? So welcome, Dr. Vishal and Nilesh ji. And my first question to both of you, right? Essentially, Dr. Vishal, you can tell us, in your opinion, how is the quantum shaping up in the next decade or so?
If you just talk about the quantum computing, it's already here, and we are already, at least at Bosch, we are already developing a lot of quantum technology-based products. One of the biggest products of ours is quantum sensors. Of course, quantum information or quantum information exchange communication, that is already here. India has demonstrated it, rest of the world have demonstrated it, and they are being used. Now, as far as quantum, as in quantum computer, that is something that is not here already. But I think I recently was reading an interview of IBM quantum computing director. He expects that by 2030, there will be enough sufficiently large quantum computers, sufficiently working quantum computers. Of course, you can't, very likely you can't still have in your home, but there will be computers which will be doing sufficiently complex calculations. So yeah, in that sense, a lot of work happening, whether it be quantum error correction, which is very important for quantum computers, whether it be different physical bits, qubits, and logical qubits, the gap between them being taken care of, and all kinds of work.
So it's interesting, right? Essentially, what I would like to double tap on what you mentioned, which is when we say quantum, most of us think, okay, there's only compute and there's communication. But it's interesting that you mentioned as a word which is quantum sensors,
Yeah.
right? So can you throw some light on what is a quantum sensor and how is that different from a normal sensor, the typical sensor that we are used to, MEMS, for example?
Yeah, so if you talk about MEMS or any other kind of sensing technology, right? In whether it be in the healthcare, where you won't need to do a simple even your different monitors, etc., figuring out different health conditions. So Bosch is now investing a lot. We already have prototypes, and we are converting them into working products. Okay? So for healthcare industry, for mining industry, for just geo exploration, hopefully our products, we are expecting they should be available in Antarctica in 5 years. This just simple sensing, which a lot of geosensing currently is not accurate, right? So our sensors hope to build that gap. So yeah, I don't know many, like when you think Bosch, many of you possibly either think power tools, washing machines, etc., appliances, or spark plugs, automotive ECUs. But almost every phone in this room has Bosch sensor in there, or at least IP in that sensor. Okay? So Bosch is a huge presence in the IT domain, IoT domain, IIoT domain. Just somehow that we don't advertise, but all the guys, or whether it be Apple, whether it be Google, whether it be Microsoft, they know when they need quality where to go. Right? So I don't think there is a single phone, whether it be the cheapest Chinese made phone, there will be very likely Bosch IP there. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so that's why we are betting a lot on quantum sensors right now. And that is very likely going to be the first quantum based product that will come out of Bosch.
Yeah.
But yes, we are working in any other thing you mentioned, like the usual thing when you think quantum compute, like AI ML based quantum algorithms for AI ML, quantum algorithms for simulation, or I'm a cryptographer, so of course I should mention quantum crypto, quantum random number generators, QKD, and of course post-quantum crypto, which is my specialty.
Sure.
Yeah.
So Nilesh, coming to you, right? Essentially, how do you see quantum as a vertical? Same question that we asked Vishal, because you come from a different perspective, right? Essentially, how do you see that evolving in the next 10 years, primarily as a startup or someone who's developing products to be used, right? Can you throw some light on that?
Sure. See, one of the so when we say that the practicality of the quantum computers, right, that is always a question mark in our head. Now, if I ask a question, what are the biggest news that has come up in a quantum domain? Okay, and this is as soon as 7 days. Two things. So the first thing is the post-quantum cryptography, right? The standards arrived, and a right time for a standards arrival. But better than that, there is another news. So there is a company called as Quantinum, which is working with Microsoft. And the interesting exercise was conducted there where they were able to run 14,000 cycles, error-free cycles, okay, with their quantum computers. Now this is a phenomenal development into quantum computing, because the practicality of a quantum computing is because of the error-prone qubits that are there, right? So from the next decade perspective, extremely exciting. Okay, I think I've spoken to a few of you, and most of guys are an expert there, so I don't need to kind of harp on the point. But it is going to basically bring in the sea change, right? And of course, what Vishal has mentioned, you have practical applications in healthcare domain, right? Drug discovery can become faster. Material science, finding out new materials and molecules, right? Information technology, security, secure communication, quantum security, QKD, right? So practically, hybrid applications will evolve, which is combining the classical computers with the quantum computers, right? Now, if you take all of this in picture, there is a very bright future for the quantum computing, okay? So this is the first part of it, as far as the impact of the quantum computing is concerned on our everyday life, right? Now, on the flip side of it, of course, you have to, as for anything in the world, you always have a black and white side. So you'll also have to deal with the black side. And what is the black side? The threats, right? The threats which will arrive from a quantum computer. So we'll have to figure out a way, and that is, I think, one of the themes that we'll be discussing at length today, right? So impact will be phenomenal as far as the positive impacts, as long as we are able to basically manage effectively the negative impact part of it, okay, we should actually do great.
So one thing that it's interesting that you mentioned about cyber threats that originate from the quantum computer, right? So I would like to come to Dr. Vishal, right? So Dr. Vishal, what we've seen is essentially everyone is afraid of quantum is going to come up and then it's going to disrupt the existing cryptography and everything, but no one seems to know essentially how do they go about doing the whole migration part and everything, right? So can you show some light on throw some light on essentially what one needs to be prepared with when they even think about, okay, chalo, I have to be ready with quantum migration, right? So anything that you can...
Yeah. So I'll start from the beginning. Hopefully all of you know, when we talk about cyber threats due to quantum computing, right now the main threat that is there due to quantum computing is on what we call public key infrastructure, public key cryptography. Okay? What is this important for? There are two things. One is confidentiality of your data, confidentiality of your communication, whatever form. So that's where encryption comes into picture. And the second thing is authentication. How do you know the data that you have received that has not been manipulated? How do you know the entity that you are talking to, that is indeed the entity that it is? If you have received the data from SBI.com, how do you know it is really from SBI.com? Right? So these are the two questions. They will be, you won't be able to answer with certainty if you keep using the current PKI. Okay? That's where the quantum computing comes into the picture as a biggest threat. Now, how to protect ourselves from this quantum computing threats? Well, as Nilesh mentioned, NIST has already standardized a lot of algorithms that should be that should be adopted in your PKI so that you can avoid these attacks. Well, now how do I adopt them and how do I change them? Should I change everything today? Quantum computer may not be there for 5 years, may not be there for 10 years. Well, you have to prepare for it. All of you, even the fastest of the startups, once you have a product out and if you have to change the product, that's where the cost comes into the picture. Making the product could be faster, but making a change in the product, that becomes a huge burden. So that's where you have to pilot, you have to test, okay? You have to build your own team which can understand so the newer algorithms, the implications of using those newer algorithms. So yeah, it's a lot of competency development, lot of testing, lot of, you don't need to do your own research, but go out, discuss with experts, listen to experts, bring them in, consult with them. Yeah.
Okay, so Nilesh, coming to you, right? Essentially, Dr. Vishal mentioned about adoption of quantum technologies, right? Your company has developed and then deployed solutions. So, what is it that companies will typically look out for when they are trying to adopt a solution? What is it that one needs to build, for example, in their product that makes the transition a bit relatively simpler for the organization who wants to adopt? If you can throw some light.
See, the transition, of course, it is always a painful process.
Yeah.
Whenever we talk about any change that happens. But if we carefully plan, okay, and I think there are already enough frameworks which are out there. And this is not specific to quantum. We have seen multiple changes that has happened, right, in the past. We have changed the DES algorithms. The DES algorithm, when it was flawed, right, we basically shifted to AES. There was SHA-256 when we migrated to better SHA, right, 512-bit and all of that. There was an vulnerability that was found into TLS, and then we again shifted to newer versions of the TLS. So the one thing that becomes challenging in the quantum domain is that, see, it is always in the future, right? Till such a point of time, somebody actually hits you and there is an impact, okay, one would not realize what is the importance of it. But from the general knowledge perspective, now I think we are all aware, and there is a rapid advancement that are happening, right? So what I would suggest is basically for the organization to do one thing, actually a couple of things. One is, first is to assess. Now what do you assess? Right? Now, if you are a sensitive agency managing extremely sensitive information, we are all aware, right? Harvest now, decrypt later. That attack can happen right now. Now, most of the regulated industry which is out there, okay, some are mandated to keep the data for 25 years, right? Now, when you are maintaining your data for 25 years and somebody is able to crack that data at later point of time, it can have a disastrous effect. So what does it mean? It means that a meticulous inventory of your data as well as your information assets. Once you have inventory of your data as well as the information asset, at that point of time you can start planning. Now how do you plan? See, there are techniques emerging, and we are one of them. We basically work in the hybrid mode. We say that, boss, you don't have to change anything. As on date today, you can put a overlay on top of an existing security that you have, right? So which is actually called as a hybrid approach. So once you inventorize, second you plan, saying, okay, how I can do actually a gradual migration, and then third is you adopt the hybrid approach, and the fourth one to actually migrate to the PQC part of it, right? So that is one of the things that you can actually adapt as far as the organization is concerned.
Interesting. So, Dr. Vishal, coming to you, right? Essentially, Nilesh ji essentially mentioned about companies who have having to maintain data for 25 years. In the case of some industries, right? You, for example, take an automotive industry. You deploy something today, and then you expect that to work for the next 20 years, sometimes with or without an upgrade capability. So how should essentially one go about even designing, let's say, quantum and implementing quantum algorithms and ensure that remains safe for the next 10-15 years?
Yeah. So yes, with certain industry like automotive industry, where your vehicle generally has a lifetime of 15 to 20 years, in some countries up to even 30 years, right? So when I am developing a car today, maybe I start developing the car, very likely it will get into market from 3 to 5 years from now. Okay? And then at that stage, from that stage, it should be have security warranties which should remain in place for at least 15 years, maybe more, up to 30 years. It all depends on which geographical location you are supplying your vehicle to. Okay? So 5 plus 30, 35 years. I have to give a secure guarantee that my vehicle will remain secure 35 years from now. Quantum computing, which can break current PKI, will be there. I can almost put my almost all money that by 2040 certainly it will be there. I can put half my money that by 2035 it will be there, and I can put good chunk of money that even 2030 there is a chance. Okay? So that's where as he was talking about planning, you have to plan for that future. And that's where we, in our automotive industry, or it doesn't need to be automotive industry, it could be aerospace. You don't make a plane and use it for only a few months, right? Or it could be your satellites. You send a Mars mission, you send a Pluto mission. Okay? They have to be there. They have to keep sending data back from there for a very long time. Okay? Your trains, okay? The buses that you are coming in. Think of it that the bus that you came in, the train that you came in, the plane that you came in, when was it made? If it was a 15-year-old vehicle, very likely a plane that is going, if that could be hacked. They were, of course, at that time not connected. But the planes that are being made today, the cars that are being made today, they are connected. If they are being hacked, I'm just using the word hack in a very generic purpose manner, and that causes an accident, I could kill you. And I could kill multiple people. Okay? So in that sense, I have to provide the security guarantees, and that's where I also have a huge risk from quantum computers. So we plan against that, and we put in our protocols, we put in our certificates, so that these certificates will give you warranties that they will be secure. At least as of now, they seem to have a good warranty, right? Of course, if somebody comes and breaks the NIST standard that was designed, let's say ML DSA, it could happen that somebody breaks it in 3 years, then I'm of course screwed. But if the guarantees are correct, then I'm okay from 30 years from now. So we are working on having these certificates. Of course, again, as Nilesh mentioned, we implement them in a hybrid manner so that you don't have to switch from your RSA today, you keep using RSA till you are sure that RSA works, there are no threats. And the day you realize, okay, my RSA may be broken, you can just flip a switch, send a software update, firmware update, and you can also start using the post-quantum algorithms. Yeah.
So, yeah, coming to back to Nilesh, right? Nilesh, you mentioned essentially how one need to take an asset of their inventory and everything, right? Did you, in your experience, did you see any industry who have, or a company who have taken the quantum solutions that, let's say, one offer, and then how do you assess if they are quantum ready? Once let's say something is implemented, one company claims that okay, chalo, we are quantum resilient, right? Are there any parameters that companies can take as a benchmark to ensure ki chalo, at least I am safe for the next 3-5 years?
See, as on date today, there is, unfortunately, there is not enough test facility.
Yeah.
Because, see, the post-quantum cryptographic algorithm can be tested onto the parameters of mathematics.
Yeah.
Okay, with the Dr. Vishal to be there, right? You can actually do a quantum simulations, right? On a traditional computer, you can actually do a quantum simulation. 3, there is a quantum computers which are available 6 qubit, 10 qubits in the public domain right now, where you can say that if I reduce the key size, what is the efficacy of my algorithm, whether it will break or not. You can actually build out a conjecture. Now this is true even for an RSA, right? So if you take an RSA algorithm and you say that, boss, for a classical computer to break the RSA, it takes millions of years, right? Nobody has actually practically broken that. So that means what? The assessment that whether I am a quantum ready or not is very important to take even your another inventory. Okay, so earlier we spoke about 2 inventories, right? One is the data inventory and another is the information asset. Information asset is your information systems that are there. There is a third inventory that you can do, which is basically your cryptographic inventory itself. Now you go to any enterprise and you say, boss, where all you are using a cryptography? Okay, and it will be surprising to find it is actually splattered across the network. Okay, when your application is talking to the database, when your customer is talking to you, when the API is talking to another API, right? Everywhere the cryptography is there, right? Because of what? Because of the 5 tenets, right, of the security. So as Dr. Vishal has mentioned, which is authentication, confidentiality, integrity, non-repudiation, and privacy, right? Now, this actually needs to be there in almost every digital interaction, okay, whether it is internal or external. Now, if we take that view and we say that, boss, for these 5 things, let me go and assess my information asset, saying what all cryptographic inventory that I have within the organization, and then subsequent to that, let me see what is the most critical piece that I want to basically protect from, right? So that kind of starts the beginning of it. Okay. Now, whether the organizations are doing it, yes, people are planning. Okay. So there is the Gartner report which has come up, which says that 20% of the enterprises are planning right now. Okay. Of course, there are some advanced people like Dr. Vishal, right, who was implementing, and there are several interests that are coming up. I have seen, of course, there would be a big movement into the government and defense space because of the obvious reasons. Because where will the quantum computer be available the first? It will be to the state actors, right? Because of the amount of money that is needed. So that is where I think there is a lot of movement, where people have already implemented QKDs, people have already implemented QRNGs, right, the quantum random number generation. People are thinking of implementing the PQC. Now, why I'm saying thinking of implementing? Because the standards was not there. Now the standards have arrived, but there is still a question mark, right? This standard is from the NIST. So people will take a view on that as well, as far as implementation as a sovereign countries are concerned, where they will want to have their own standards and own algorithms as well. and start implementing that. So from the industry perspective, it will differ from industry to industry. Government and defense will be the first to adopt and adapting. The second one is the critical infrastructure, right? Because that's where the another attack vector actually comes into the picture. The third is then the financial domain, because that is the third attack vector. When you want to cripple the country, what do? These are the three critical things that you do, right? So that is where the adoption leads to. And from the implementation perspective, I think that guideline is there, right? As long as you are able to assess and inventorize your all of the asset, including the cryptographic asset, you will find a mechanism to basically obliterate the threats that are emerging.
Okay, so Dr. Vishal, you mentioned about organizations taking the hybrid approach, right?
Yeah.
For implementing the post-quantum or adopting post-quantum in their IT infrastructure, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Mr. Nilesh mentioned essentially taking inventories of data inventory, the crypto inventory, and everything else. Are there any best practices other than whatever Dr. Nilesh mentioned that you recommend for organizations to look at when they are going about this transition plan?
So yeah, creating this crypto inventory or cryptographic bill of materials, we call it. So we have an automated solution which basically looks at your various assets and creates this CBOM. So that becomes the first step. What kind of crypto you're already using, okay? And of course, your general security practices, that the best practices, they are still applicable. Yeah, on the top of it, you have to get ready for quantum, right? Or the quantum threat. And of course, on cybersecurity, I'm a cryptographer, and I think because Nilesh also mainly works with post-quantum topic, so we are talking here. But quantum will have a lot of other threats also on security. Okay? A quantum attacker, quantum computing can improve their AI algorithms, and they can use AI to crack your simple firewall, right? Your simple whatever your IPsec you might have implemented, or your policies might have implemented. Those attacks are still there, looking for vulnerabilities in your system using quantum simulation, etc. Those are still there. So right now we are mainly focusing on post-quantum. Okay? So from post-quantum crypto point of view, create a CBOM, okay? And then, as he mentioned, do your risk analysis. Which data needs to be secure for how long? Which assets need to be secure for how long? What are your security goals? Confidentiality, integrity, authenticity, etc. Figure out those, and how long do you need those? How long the guarantees are needed? For example, in a bank, if the bank is thinking of the basic daily transactions of a customer, if that transaction gets leaked 5 years from now, that may not have a huge legal implication on the bank. Ki Vishal transferred 5 rupees to Teja, okay, bank may not have a huge penalty. But now on the other hand, if the communication was bank's internal strategy, that is the business intelligence, right? And especially if they are doing something shady, that thing gets leaked 5 years from now, the bank will have huge penalties. Okay? So in that sense, you have to do a risk analysis. Okay? So what I am doing at my work today, if it gets leaked tomorrow, possibly not a huge problem. If I am having an affair outside my home, even on my deathbed, my wife will kill me first. Right? So do a risk analysis. Ki which data and what property of that data I need to ensure when a quantum computer arrives. So we prepare the CBOM, we do the risk analysis, okay, and then we recommend strategies to our whoever is implementing. So I'm the cryptographer, my client could be my own company, Bosch, that in this topic, in this place, you need to have post-quantum algorithms. Okay? So, and then of course you go by the hybrid approach. So this is right now that's the best practice. Figure out, really hire experts at risk analysis, really hire your threat modeling guys who can do this. So that's the starting point. And yes, hire us experts. Yeah.
Nilesh, essentially, I think Dr. Vishal is in a good spot. Essentially, he makes something and he has a customer, right? But in your case, it's a bit different, right? But one of the things that we hear is at the end of the day, all of this is a budget decision that one has to take. So, what is the logic that you put forward typically to press the need of investing in the quantum resiliency today? And what factors do you think should drive the decisions, let's say for CISO to mention to the board, right? They need to give me, let's say, XYZ budget. So why should organizations essentially give that budget right away, and what factors do they need to consider while giving access to this budget?
So beautiful question and a tricky one, Teja. See, there are guys who will appreciate the threat.
Yeah.
So as I said, government and defense, they will appreciate the threat part of it, right? That is why there would be a budget which will be cut out. Now, why would they appreciate? Because see, now in the quantum domain, the governments across the world has actually invested more than $35 billion. And which is the biggest investor? Guess. Any guesses? See, his name is Colonel Kapil Jaiswal.
Yeah.
Okay, see, and the answer came from where? Okay, that answers itself.
Yeah.
So I don't have to go and fight with the defense saying, boss, you actually need a post-quantum cryptography or security from quantum. However, rest of the industry segment, probably this may be true for, now this will percolate to the critical infrastructure as well.
Yeah.
Now when it goes to down below, as far as other industries are concerned, as far as we are concerned, we basically tell them, boss, I am actually solving your today's problem, which is, as Dr. Vishal says, authentication, confidentiality, integrity, non-repudiation, and privacy. Okay, and by the way, we are also quantum safe. So take it, right? So that is the way to do that. Now, from the planning perspective, now if the CISOs are, and there are serious CISOs, right? We have met a couple of CISOs from oil and natural gas companies here who are actually serious. So from the planning perspective, I do believe that now, till such a point of time, just like a cybersecurity is also gone into the board discussion, there would be a point where the quantum computing also will go into the board discussion, right? But the planning can begin right now, as far as that is concerned. So it is all about now doing the budgeting part of it, okay, and the allocation part of it. Now, so as on date today, we basically allocate around 30% of the budget into prevention, around 30 to 40% into detection, and rest into remediation or response, right? So SOC and NOC and all of that. Now, a portion of that budget, which is the prevention and the detection, actually can be allocated towards your critical assets. How to implement that critical asset? There is already a roadmap that I have given. Okay. From the framework perspective, now there is a funny term that I kind of remember and which I tell to my customers. Okay. To remember, how do you basically implement as far as the post-quantum is concerned? See, the term is happy kids, okay, like going to bed carefully. Okay, now let me explain that, okay? I'll repeat that. Happy kids like going to bed, okay, carefully. Happy stands for hybrid. Okay, we have spoken about hybrid. K stands for your key. As on date today, we are using 2048. It is a very well known knowledge that if you bump up the key, if you double the key size, you are fairly protected into the distant future, right? Okay. G, going, is the gradual. How do you migrate? You actually migrate gradual using your hybrid system, right? T is basically test thoroughly. Test and inventorize, of course. Inventorize and test whether you have basically actually achieved the readiness from the perspective of your assets, okay? B is again critical. It is a backward compatibility, okay, where all of the systems that you have, the critical inference system, those should be backward compatible part of it, okay? And the C is the most important thing, okay? One of my friend is there, Dr. Shravani, right? And she is a specialist inside that. So C stands for cryptographic agility.
Okay.
Now, why cryptographic agility is concerned, as Dr. Vishal has mentioned earlier, see, as on date today, there are 3 standards algorithms. What is the guarantee that this standard algorithm will remain unbroken, right? And we have seen that earlier, right? So earlier, whatever shortlisted algorithms are there, one of those algorithms was actually broken with a classical computer, with a quantum simulation, part of it. So that means the cryptographic agility is necessary, where you should be able to change the algorithms as and when required, okay, as and when the standards change based on what you hear.
Interesting, right? So essentially, Dr. Vishal, coming to you, when you are looking at the whole quantum migration, I feel it's very important that all the stakeholders, including industry, academia, and everyone should work together. You come primarily from academia background, and now you have a good flavor of working in the industrial side, right? So how should essentially industry and academia work together, in your opinion, to build the quantum resiliency at a country level?
So yes, generally way back when I was purely in academia and just doing theoretical research, at that time, any tiny security issue needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
You don't care about the cost. You find a solution. Okay, there is a security issue. You have to fix it. Then, and at that time, you don't even look at the how complicated your solution could be. Then, my first interaction outside academia was with defense agencies, whether it be Department of Homeland Security in USA or National Security Agency in USA, and then later various government agencies in India. Then the complications, the use cases, they come into the picture, that you have to simplify your solution, you have to worry about the bandwidth, you have to worry about, let's say, time, the compute time, resource constraints. And then my third stint was, now I'm in industry. And that's where we just spoke about the economics part of it, finance part of it, the actual money, right? Every paisa counts, every cent counts. Okay? So, and because industry is so heavy focused on the cost part and getting the experts into the industry, already there are very few experts available in the world. Yeah. And the whole industry is competing for them to join them, but you don't even have enough experts. And many of these academic guys, you can count myself, we like the comfort of academia, right? We are very comfortable there. So however much money you want to pay, you are not going to get experts anyway. And even if one company gets, the other won't get it. So that's the issue. And building your own task force is going to be very, very expensive, if not impossible. So that's where, if you work with academia, you have a very cheap solution available. When I was a professor in, let's say, in any of the academic institute, I had a free task force of hundreds of students. I have a problem, I want to build a solution, give them a project, right? Give them a homework. And my solution is there for free with me, and that too in really fast. They are motivated, but they know that their grade depends on it. My recommendation letter will define whether they go to Harvard or they go to MIT or they go to some Jhumritaliya college. So, free labor force for me, right? So when industry collaborates with academia, they can get there much faster. You cross a lot of red tape. And that's why I think even the government, they end up coming outside and work with academia. I personally have seen there are like really smart people within the government. Really, I have so much respect for our own Indian government agencies. So many smart people. But they are not able to actually work. There's so much other hierarchy, red tape. I know somebody who might be an expert in a particular stream of cryptography, but he's made to work in a different stream of cryptography, and so on. So when you work with academia, you can get your job done much faster, much cheaper, and you can stay ahead of the curve. So that's where, like, I believe that industry, government, they should nurture this academics and give them their projects. Yeah.
I think this is quite interesting. Essentially, in what we seen in India is that there are very few industry and academia synergies that happen. Most of both of them sort of work in silos. So, but what we've seen, I can echo what Dr. Vishal said. Working essentially with academia can get you to the market much quicker. It's counterintuitive. We always feel that academia is quite slow in execution, but through our experience, we know for a fact you working with an academia partner essentially will significantly enhance the speed to the market. So I invite you to essentially to look at working with academia, and if you are specifically interested, then as DSCI we can help you out finding the right academia partner as well. But it does really make a difference, not just in terms of quicker GTM, go to market, but also in terms of access to the technology. Academicians typically are 3 to 5 years ahead, but their product level will be quite on LTRL 2, 3, 4. But working with industry partner, they can really you can help them, and then they can help you out in the technology, and then you can get to the market. It's a win-win for both of you. So that's an interesting thing that I personally learned in the last 2 to 3 years. So Nilesh ji, Dr. Vishal, I caught one word Dr. Vishal talked about, which is red tape. How do you see regulatory landscape changing that will enable quantum innovation in the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years? If you can throw some light.
Yeah. See, we have already seen one regulation, which is, I think, 2023,
Yeah.
where the Biden
White
has
House.
actually signed a
Yeah.
law that most of the national critical infrastructure has to start transitioning by 2025.
Yeah.
I do believe that that regulation will be everywhere. Okay, most of the governments are looking at it as far as the compliance to that is concerned, and it will be again the regulated industry which will be hit first, which is the government, defense, infrastructure, and of course the financial domain, because that's where the hit onto the country is a lot more. So that is one part of it. As far as the post-quantum cryptography is concerned, as far as the quantum computing is concerned, just like we people have started thinking about ethics inside an AI and a large language model because of the funny things that they can do. Okay, where if you have a skeleton key, you can actually do very funny things with AI. Similar to that, I do believe that there would be an evolution of form factors as far as that ethics is concerned on the quantum computing, because once you have a massive amount of computing power at your disposal, how do you use that computing power for what purposes, right? So that remains a question mark. So that probably it's into works. Not sure about this news, but these probably Dr. Vishal or some of you may have heard about it, that NASA has actually shut down the project. Okay. This was around February. There was a news item because of again an ethics issue. Now, what was that internally and all of that? Okay, because we don't know that as on date today. But these kind of threats also will emerge, just like you said, right? If you combine the power of a quantum computer with a large language model or generative AI, what are the possibilities? There could be a number of possibilities that will evolve. So that is the second kind of a regulation that will kind of hit over the period of time, right? But out of that, the first one will be the PQC regulation that will kind of come into the picture very, very fast.
Okay, interesting. Now, essentially, I'll open the floor for any questions that you may have. Anyone has any questions, then you are free to ask. We have just a couple of minutes. Yeah.
Hi. Usually, what happens is the industry only kind of makes a move, and something bad happens. So, as per your expert advice, how far we are from that event, from quantum computing? that bad event that can occur?
Nilesh?
See, he has already bet his money on 2030 and 2035, right? But there are two, again, a very interesting event that has happened, okay? And you can build a conjectures on these two events. In the Diwali time, 2023 Diwali, approximate that time, there is a scientist by the name of Ed Gerg, and you can search him right now. He's a cryptographer, okay? And he has basically claimed on a LinkedIn, along with some paper, that with the quantum simulation, they were able to basically break RSA 2048. Okay? Now this is up for debate into the academic community as well as in the cryptographic community. Okay? So what does it mean? When you say that I have, theoretically speaking, I have break RSA 2048, that means the entire security world is at a threat. Before that, I do believe in the December, there was again a paper by a Chinese researcher.
Yeah.
Right? So with 21 Chinese researchers has jointly written a paper, okay, which basically claimed with 372 qubits, they are able to break the RSA 2048. Okay. Now, why this paper came into the public domain and all of that, if we leave aside that question and just focus on the facts, certain facts, that there is a paper which is again debating, okay, in the academic domain. And there is a second fact. In the same month, IBM has released an Osprey. Osprey is a quantum computer capable of doing 432 qubits. Now put 1 and 1, 2 together. Right? So these are some of the things which has actually come out to the public domain. Now there is a third fact, okay, which I think the government people will appreciate. See, one-time pads were developed how long? The one-time pads
50 years ago?
around 50 years. When was the one-time pads cracked?
30 years?
Right? The one-time pads were actually cracked around 20 years later. So, right? But when it actually came into the public domain, the public domain actually came when US government basically said that we want to now release this information into the public domain. Okay? So that means what? That means from the preparation perspective, how serious you want to be. If you look at all of these three events, the 4 events, and if you look at the history, then you can conjecturize. Saying, do you want to be ready today? Or I want to basically be ready when the quantum computer arrives. Okay? I know that this is not a straight answer, but there is no straight answer right now.
That is the reason I was asking for an expert advice.
Yeah, and most of you guys are security people, and a lot of CISOs are at least there in this event. They have a very limited budget. You will not find a single CISO here who's not crying about the budget.
Agree.
Right? And that means they have to take very tough decisions. Okay? And the CISOs have to deal with product owners, product managers who develop a product and they want to release it in the market yesterday. And they come to us today, ki, hey, we have to release this yesterday, can you do a security review or something, or can you implement some security there? Right? So in that sense, security is already overburdened. When we talk about a quantum computer, immediately a CISO is like, अरे यार quantum computer आज नहीं है ना, let's worry about it जब आएगा. The problem is, आज जो आप कर रहे हो, whatever you are doing today, that will be impacted when in future. And this vision, that planning for that time, that really requires a little bit of commitment from the management side, from the CISO side, that yes, something will happen. It's not about can happen. It will happen. It will impact your security. Now, how much of I would almost say, how much irresponsible you are. Because product owners, usually they don't even care about security. If there is an issue, we'll send a patch. Okay? Let's not worry about the security today. If there is some vulnerability, we'll send a patch. If there is an incident, we'll take care of it. If you are like that, then you don't have to do anything. So you have to now commit. There is going to, and in this case, there is no chance of if. It will happen. The when, there is a question about when, but it will happen. Now, do you want to plan for that or not? And you have to plan today, possibly yesterday. So that's it.
So just a little bit addition, okay? So here is the way to kind of deal with this situation. So if you say, go to the management and tell them, boss, I need $100,000 because I want to basically start inventorizing and start planning for quantum computing to be there, right? So one way to do that is the hybrid one, right? Where you have a possibility to migrate. Where how do you basically possibility to migrate is when you actually plan your supply chain, right?
Yeah.
When you are actually getting the products, the security products on premise and planning your information security architecture part of it. At that point of time, you can also look at the roadmap of your vendors, right? So if your vendor roadmap says that was within 3 years, I'm going to implement some algorithms so that my existing product is going to become quantum safe. Probably give a 1 notch up when you are doing the vendor evaluation part of it. When, see, there is again a third thing which is now rampantly being used everywhere, which we call as a security engineering. Everybody does that. Left shift is happening already, right? We shifted up and we shifted left. We shifted left mean what? The security is no longer in operations, right? It is not post facto, it is not post production. Security is when you are developing. Okay, so we already have gone 1 shift left. So that means what? That means that I can actually start thinking about implementation and tell my developers to say, basically, boss, if I tell you to migrate, how sooner you can do that, right? So that is an incremental budget. It is not, you are not saying binary, कि मेरे को post quantum करने का है और मेरे को नहीं करने का, right? What we are deciding is basically a journey or a path towards that. And that is how you basically start preparing. And supply chain has actually become critical now, right? With the CrowdStrike, everybody talks about it. So morning sessions were all about CrowdStrike, right? So that's the criticality of supply. So anyway, you have to evaluate your supply chain. You have to consolidate your security operations, right? Consolidate the vendors part of it. So that's where it can begin.
I think there's no better way than closing it like this, right? Essentially, the key takeaway for me from especially the last pointers is there's something that every one of us that you need to be you need to consider when you're thinking about even post-quantum migration. If you are a developer, essentially, in my opinion, you try to see how quickly can you integrate post-quantum thing in your solution so that it becomes an incremental thing rather than what Dr. Vishal mentioned, which is once you develop something, it's a significantly costlier affair to do it. If you are a CISO, then you need to think about essentially building quantum resiliency today. Why? Because Dr. Vishal's money is on the table. 2030 tak it's gonna hit, or worst case 2040, 2035, 2040 tak it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. So you need to think about doing it. And if you are in a board level position, then you need to enable the whole process. At least think about doing it in a hybrid way so that you are protected not just today but also from threats from tomorrow. With that, we close the discussion of this session. I invite you to join me in giving our panelists a big round of applause. So thank you, Dr. Vishal and Nilesh. We'll take a quick photo and then a very short memento, and then we'll go for the next panel.